Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Anglo Election Insights. Today, I thought we'd have a bit of fun. So, this is the coalition's worst nightmare scenario, where basically I've written up a map where I have given Labor or the Teal Independents or the Greens or the rest of the crossbench all of the seats in which I think they have some sort of feasible chance of winning, and that does exclude some seats, but I did want to make it a scenario that could feasibly happen, rather than just a complete sort of coalition haters wet dream. So the real kicker here isn't necessarily the seat count. I mean, obviously, with the coalition down to 44 seats, they would face a massive mountain to climb to get back to any sort of political relevance, but especially to get back close to a majority. That they'd be sitting, over 30 seats away coming into 2028, and with quite a few of their typical seats held by independents that might be harder to dislodge. But also, you would have about 60 Labor seats that would be safe. So, it would take massive swings to dislodge some of these Labor MPs. And obviously you'd have to unseat quite a few of them if you were the coalition in this predicament. So we'll just take a bit of a tour of this map seat by seat. Like I said, it's a bit of fun. Don't take it too seriously, but we'll just talk about it as a sort of nightmare scenario for the coalition, and talk about maybe how realistic some of the prospects actually are. So if we start up north, firstly we have Darwin, where a sophomore surge would allow Labor to take Lingiari, and they would hold on easily in Solomon. Then in far north Queensland, in the seat of Leichhardt, despite the demographic change that sort of probably favours the coalition in terms of lots of retirees and older voters, I have the coalition losing that seat due to the loss of Warren Entsch's personal vote, and just the national tide against the LNP that would happen at this scenario. I also have both Capricornia and the seat of Flynn going quite marginal. And as we head down into southeast Queensland, we can see Blair becomes a safe Labor seat. We've got Groom is quite nearly lost to an independent, and Labor makes serious inroads in some of these seats. I don't have the LNP losing either of their, or any seats on the sunny coast or on the Gold Coast. I just, even on a bad night, I'm just not sure those campaigns truly have the legs. Some people on the ground may disagree, that's fine. But again, I didn't want to draw a map where the coalition only won 20 seats or something. It's not realistic, if you ask me. So the big one here, Longman and Petrie going very marginal, but then Dixon flipping. The thing with Dixon is that there's a massive local ground game campaign happening. So, and obviously with Peter Dutton, most people coming into this election expected that his profile would increase in the electorate being opposition leader, and historically that means that, their seat becomes a little bit safer. But in this scenario, Dutton's kind of personal appeal has been completely rejected, and that reflects in his own seat, and off it goes. I would also have the Greens winning Ryan, and then Labor winning Brisbane, because the LNP vote would drop and a lot of it would leak to Labor in this scenario. Bonner is another one that would be very close to flipping, particularly with the change in demographics. From what I understand, there's more Chinese Australians, and there's a lot more development and high-rise densification going on, which is going to make Bonner very tough to hold for the LNP in future cycles. But even in this scenario, I think they hang on only just. And then, seats like Ford become quite close as well. Again, similar to the seat of Brisbane, if the LNP vote is dropping, across the country, then I would imagine Labor is the major beneficiary, and that would allow them to stay ahead of the Greens in the seat of Richmond. Page once again becomes marginal. Cowper is lost to Independent. Lyne becomes marginal to the Independent. And Calare is lost to Andrew G. So then we come towards Sydney. Hunter arguably becomes a race between Labor and One Nation, which Labor would win. Patterson doesn't flip. Shortland, Dobell, Newcastle, Robertson, the margins all become safer for Labor. Barawa is narrowly won against a Teal challenge. The existing Teal seats become much safer, and Bradfield is lost to a Teal as well. Bennelong, Labor increases their margin, as they do elsewhere in Sydney in seats like Reid and Parramatta. The Liberals still winning in Mitchell, Cook, Banks, Hughes narrowly, and Lindsay. You could argue that Hughes would flip in this scenario, and Banks really, but again, I didn't want to make a projection with the Liberals winning basically nothing. So those two seats I think would really take a massive national movement that we're probably not seeing, even if the polls miss in favour of the coalition here. Hume, similar. Macquarie becomes safe, and as does a seat like Eden Monaro. No troubles in some of these other seats where the coalition claims to be doing well, like Whitlam or MacArthur. Gilmore wouldn't flip in this scenario, but you would have, some safe coalition seats in Western New South Wales, of course. Victoria, the Nats would hang on to their 3 seats without a problem. Indi becomes safe for Helen Haynes, and Alex Dawson would certainly win in Wannon. I have Russell Broadbent here, winning in Monash. You guys might have seen there was a Climate 200 poll published which had Deb Leonard making the count, but it was, it's Climate 200 UComs, so they're a little bit push polly, so I wouldn't sort of concern yourself too much with that. A seat like Latrobe, the margin comes in, but Jason Woods would be alright. Casey, I think the Liberal guy is probably popular enough to hold this seat even in a bad environment, and I think a lot of right-wing minor party vote would probably help prop him up. And there's a bit of a split in the left vote. Like, I'm not sure in this scenario if Labor or the Teal makes the count. That could be one of the dominoes that falls, but at this stage, I think the Liberals would be able to hang on even in a pretty bad night for them. However, I don't think they'd be able to hang on in either Menzies or Deakin, but Aston is one where it seems like Labor aren't throwing many resources at all at it. But that's not to say that they couldn't win it. There have been instances in the past where Labor's pretty much won seats, at the state level especially, with just on their brand rather than necessarily a local campaign. The state seats of Bass and Nepean back in 2018 come to mind. Obviously, Labor increased their margins all through the southeast, and no real threat to their red wall. Their increased primary would account for the Greens in both Wills and McNamara, I believe, as well. And Flinders here, I have flipping to Ben Smith, the Climate 200 Independent. Down in Tassie, I have Bass flipping to Labor, Lyons remaining with Labor, Franklin as a safe Labor hold, and Wilkie would win in Clark. But Braddon in this scenario, it's on a much bigger margin, which is probably inflated a bit from where it really would be if it was, generic Liberal versus generic Labor. There were problems with the Labor campaign last time round, and Gavin Pearce arguably had a bit of a personal vote too. But to me, this electorate doesn't have it has a history of swinging, as does Bass, but at this stage, just with how old and kind of white the electorate is, given that at the state election in 2024, it's still there was still like a 45% primary vote for the Liberals. I just don't quite see that there would be enough of a swing there to take out that seat, even on a really good night for Labor. They'd be safe in all of their ACT seats. We'll go into South Australia. So the Liberals hang on to Grey and Barker, but they completely lose everything in Metropolitan Adelaide. All the seats basically safe. Boothby, the margin probably blows out a bit, and Sturt swings to Labor by probably 4 or 5%, to be honest. Then we'll go over to Perth, where we'll finish up. Somewhat marginal out in the regions. Labor able to win Bullwinkle, mostly from preference leakage from the Nationals. Forrest lost to the Climate 200 Independent. Canning remains a very marginal seat. And as we go into Perth, Conservative vote splitting in Moore would deliver Labor that seat. Cheney hangs on in Curtin, and Tangney remains a Labor seat with a swing to Sam Lim. And elsewhere in suburban Perth are pretty much safe seats. So there you have it, guys. Hopefully all you Labor and Green bros, or particularly Labor bros, enjoyed that one. Look, I think this is a very, very, very outlandish prediction, although probably a little bit more realistic than the one coming later today, which is the coalition majority. So keep your eyes peeled for that one. We'll have a bit of fun there too. But thanks for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video. Cheers.